Hello, friends, and welcome to the Fluidity Podcast, where I dive deep into spirituality and self-realization. This podcast is really my journey in learning to align, express, and embody my fullness in hopes to help you do the same. So, welcome. My name is Hannah, and today is podcast number 3. I cannot believe it, actually. And those of you that have watched the 2 others, thank you. And thank you for watching this one if you're new here. In today's podcast, I really wanted to talk about the art of letting go of control, how to surrender to life, accept and trust that life has it all figured out for us, and we just need to ride the wave and follow the flow of life. So this podcast is really going to be about my experience or my relationship with letting go and control, because that's the only experience I can speak on. So let's get to the quote, friends. Those of you that have watched my 2 other podcasts kind of got an idea that I like to start my podcast with a quote that is that a word? Encapsulates, I don't know, a quote that really encapsulates, I don't think that's a word, a quote that really ties the whole podcast together. And this quote came to me while I was journaling on this topic, the art of letting go, surrender, control. And it was so random because this is a quote from a movie that I used to watch with my friends all the time when we were younger. It was my absolute favorite movie, and it had to do with mermaids, even better. I was a little obsessed with mermaids growing up. My friends from the neighborhood gang, you know what I'm talking about. So the movie is Aquamarine. I'm going to give you guys, those of you that haven't seen it, I'm going to give you like a little backstory because the quote will make more sense. So basically, it is a mermaid. Her name is Aquamarine. She comes to land. She gets legs, and she meets these best friends, and one of them is like very free, very, just goes with the flow. The other one, her name's Claire. She is very uptight, does not go with the flow, is scared of everything, almost like scared of life. And she lost her parents very young, so she just didn't trust the world. She didn't trust life. And Aquamarine pulls her aside. She gives her a little pep talk. And what she says is, and she's talking about her parents here, I don't think they would have wanted you to be afraid of life. I think they would have wanted you to be friends with it. So that last sentence, I think they would have wanted you to be friends with it. I remember the moment I heard that quote, and it always stuck with me. I never understood how you could be friends with life. And I think because I was, in a sense, Claire. I was scared of life. I didn't trust life. I just didn't trust life at all. I didn't trust myself. And the idea of letting go and letting go of control, I didn't even think that was an option because I was so scared of life. Pause while I drink my green tea. The fear of letting go and holding on to control really is fear driving the actions. It's fear that's behind the need to control. This is a topic that is very hard for me to talk about. I didn't admit this to a soul until this year, and that soul was my therapist. And I've never truly talked about this, so not easy, but I do feel like I'm in a good place to talk about it. And I also want to have a moment of gratitude for this podcast because it has really helped me understand my feelings, because having to talk these through, having to really sit down and journal. I've tried to journal before, but when I was for the cause of this podcast, I felt myself really dive in deep, and I wrote pages on this topic, and I learned a lot, and I had some realizations further than what I have already realized this far. This is something that no one really knows about me, honestly. Not even my parents. They may have had an idea, but I never really opened up about this before. So at a very young age, I was very controlling, internally controlling. I suffered in silence with OCD, and I didn't know what it was until I got older. I didn't even know there was different types of OCD, and I never actually looked into it because I was so ashamed and so embarrassed, honestly, of my relationship with my own mind, and I felt so helpless and I felt so out of control in my own mind, which is why I think I had to control everything, and it was all fear-based. Again, I didn't trust my own, I was suffering inside to where it got really bad, to where I remember thinking, I don't want to live if life is like this. And I never expressed that to anybody. No one knew. I figured out I had OCD probably my late teens to 20s. I self-diagnosed myself after years of dealing with it. It was really severe from 6 or 7 to about 22 years old. I was afraid of my own mind. I didn't know I was doing this to myself. I thought it was something I could not control. A lot of this is hard for me to talk about, so I do want to read some things that I wrote down when I was journaling, because I think that they really explain how I was feeling. So this is one passage that I wrote yesterday, and it was, I thought something was wrong with me for years. I never told anyone about my OCD, even though people would notice or question. I would make excuses or deflect. My parents would notice. They would notice the things I would do and say things like, stop, what are you doing? Don't be weird. What is that? Some friends would say the same. I would always deflect, and I really did hide it a lot growing up. It honestly controlled my life, like I said, from 7 to about 21, 22. The negative thoughts would ruminate in my mind all day long, and I had a lot of compulsions tell me things to do, like knocking on wood was good luck. So if I had a bad thought, I would think knocking on wood would somehow make that thought go away, and it would alleviate it for a second, but then the thought would come right back. And I remember being very young in elementary school, and there was a table in my classroom, and I would get up every time I would have a bad thought, and I would knock on the wood, and it would make me feel better, and then I'd sit down, and then the thought would come right back. And I remember feeling so ashamed and so lost and so frustrated and so scared all the time. And I truly thought something was severely wrong with me and that I was broken. I would only eat certain things. I would only wear certain clothes that I thought brought me luck. It was, looking back on it, it makes me sad to think that I lived like that. And no wonder why I had so much anxiety, because I was trying to control everything around me when that wasn't my job. But at that age, I didn't have the awareness I have now to know that I didn't have to listen to these thoughts. And I think the OCD started because of a deep, deep, deep fear of not being in control of my life, feeling like I was broken because the things in my mind I didn't understand, and I felt a lot of deep emotions young, and I thought that there was something wrong with me. So I thought, why would life work out for me? Why would good things happen to me? I have to make sure that I protect myself. I had expectations for everything in life. I always thought about the next thing or the next moment. I was constantly planning moment by moment, what would happen, what would I do? And then bad thoughts would enter in, and I remember feeling this compulsion to do certain things. Like my mind was like tricking me. I didn't trust myself at all. I never trusted life to handle things. I took on the full-time job of the universe, something I had no business doing. I thought I had to do the full-time job. I thought life didn't love me, so I had to fight and control. I convinced myself no one will care or love me enough to help me, or that life wouldn't work out for me, but it would for everyone else. So I had to control and push and never relax or enjoy life because I was fighting to keep myself out of the trenches that my mind made me believe I was in, until a couple months ago when I truly did let go. 7 to about 22 was rough for me. I tried to suppress the OCD. Once I got into drinking, the drinking became very toxic because it was honestly the only thing that quieted my mind. At least I thought, but it honestly made everything 10 times worse. About 7 to 22 was the severe OCD, and this was OCD these were compulsions that I felt like I had to physically do, or I had to physically do things. I had to physically move a certain way. There are different types of OCD: orderliness and symmetry OCD. I'm going to read you what was on Google. And it was characterized by ongoing intrusive thoughts and compulsive behaviors surrounding sameness, orderliness, balance, and symmetry, which is very similar to what I had from about 7 to 22. Things had to be a certain way. I had to move them, or I would feel uneasy. I would have severe anxiety. After about 22, I started to realize that I couldn't live like that. I didn't want to tell anybody, but I knew if I had to live like that, I wouldn't. I started realizing that I could just not do the things my mind were telling me. And I'm like, okay, so then that kind of created this, okay, why is my mind telling me this if it's not going to happen? Like, why is my mind trying to sabotage me? And that's how I felt. But I didn't have to listen to these compulsions my mind was telling me to do. I didn't have to control everything. I thought I cured myself, but the OCD manifested in a different way. And that turned into me controlling my fitness, my eating. So about 22, 23, I started getting into fitness, and I was very obsessive of my workouts, of how I was eating. I controlled everything because I had an expectation of how I was supposed to look, of how my life was supposed to be. I never felt like life was for me. I always felt like I had to push, I had to fight, because I felt like I was wrong, like I was stupid, that I was broken. I really do think that a lot of us do feel that brokenness, and it's hard to explain the feeling of feeling broken, but I think a lot of us collectively do feel that, and it is a terrible feeling. And it's fear-based. It makes us act in fear because we don't believe that good things will happen to us. And that was a deep belief for my whole life until now. And I'm still working on it. But, sorry, I got off topic. Yeah, I started controlling my workouts, my food. I also thought happiness and everything looked a certain way. You know, you had to be successful, you had to be all these things, you had to be fit, you had to have money. I saw other people doing that made them happy. I tried to copy that, and I tried to control everything in my life to a T. I could not let go. I was holding on to this expectation of, if I just am successful, if I have the body, if I have all these things, then none of it matters. All the shit I went through, I don't have to look back, and I can just keep pushing, and I can just not think about it. And yeah, that didn't happen. So I didn't realize until a couple months ago that that was just a different form of OCD. I was obsessively trying to control the outcome of my life, of every situation, of every day. And I was giving myself a job that I had no business giving myself. I was taking on every little thing. I thought if I didn't think about the whole day in detail and try to control every little thing, then my day would crumble and bad things would happen. I did not trust life to look out for me. I thought that I was that one person that life forgot about, because if my mind can talk to me the way it did, then I was obviously broken, and I had to try to make sure no one found out that I was broken. So I suppressed everything because I thought if someone found out how my mind talked to me, or how I really was and what I was dealing with, that I would never be successful. I would never have friends. I would never be normal. I don't even know what normal is, by the way. Overrated. And so looking back on that, a lot of it was fear of what others would think. And this kind of ties into my last week's episode, but really trying to fit a mold and fit an expectation that I thought was how I was supposed to be, because I saw others doing it and I saw others happy, and I thought if I could just do that, I could be that, I'll be happy too. But that was the complete opposite. I had so much anxiety, and I didn't even know it was anxiety until a couple years ago, because that's how I lived every day. It was in deep fear of everything imaginable bad happening. It was on constant replay. The rumination of just terrible things happening to me, to my family, and just being afraid of my own mind and being afraid of my own emotions. I was scared to feel anything. And I ran from those emotions for years, and suppressing them and not dealing with them made them worse, made the anxiety worse. I, for a long time, hated myself. I hated my mind. Thought anxiety was something that I was burdened with, that it was my body or my mind hating me. And I didn't like the way my mind talked to me. And I thought that this was going to go on forever. I was scared of my anxiety because I didn't understand it. I thought that it was something that was working against me because I just got the short end of the stick. And what I realized is my anxiety wasn't against me. It wasn't trying to hurt me. It wasn't doing any of those things. My anxiety was actually trying to save me. It was trying to tell me, this is not your job. You don't need to take all this on. It was trying to tell me to let go and not do the job of the universe and enjoy the life I was given, and know that everything was going to work out for me. Everything was going to happen to me that needed to, that I didn't have to take this unrealistic job on to enjoy my life and be friends with it, be friends with life, and trust that life has my back, because we are of life, we are of the earth, we're not in it, we're of it. And to realize that you were totally wrong about something you thought made you weak and different and weird, and something that you thought made you broken was the thing that was speaking to you the loudest. And to make peace with that and see it as something that was my greatest gift. Words can't describe how I how that made me feel, how much peace that brings me, and again, how much gratitude I have for this podcast for really helping me dig deep into the things I thought I could never share about myself, the things I thought that were wrong with me. Anxiety was not something to be fearful of, but it was something to embrace. And to sit through the anxiety so it can talk to you is not easy. But I truly believe that the emotions that we have are a gift, and they are meant to be felt. They are teaching us something. They are showing us that we're not alone and that we're human. And for so long, I believed that anxiety and sadness and those deep, deep emotions were not supposed to be felt, that they were something that made you wrong. If you felt them, then that was your identity. You were that sad person. You were the one with anxiety. They're not us. They're not who we are. They're showing us, they're teaching us, but they're not who we are. And to kind of step back and not be so attached to even those emotions can help you really listen to what they're trying to tell you. I was listening to this podcast, and she said something so beautiful about the emotions of distress and joy, how we can feel. Unfortunately, my video just stopped working because I didn't have enough storage. So I had to delete some stuff, make some room, and here we are. So I wanted to finish out the rest of the podcast and pick up where I left off. I believe I was talking about a podcast or a conversation I heard that kind of ties in well to what I'm talking about. She was talking about how happiness and distress are the same, and to feel them with equanimity because they both should be celebrated. One is not better than the other. They both are here to teach us something. So I know we celebrate the happiness, the joy, and we kind of disregard or shut down or drowned out the sad and the darker, deeper emotions. Instead of doing that, see them as both a gift, because they are, really feeling those both sides of the emotions with equanimity and allowing them to do what they're here for, which is to teach us. And I can really relate to this when I think about my anxiety. I couldn't during the years 7 to 22, but now looking at it, like I said prior, the anxiety was trying to tell me to let go. A burden. It wasn't to punish me. It was to teach me. Now that anxiety is so loud that if I try to control an outcome based on how I think it should be, or I'm just like obsessing of the future or like reliving the past and just like in my thoughts, my anxiety gets very, very loud. And now that I can see that as a signal of strength to let go and not something to be ashamed of and try to drown out, it is still a learning process. I'm still learning to listen to it and not attach to that emotion and think that it's something that's wrong with me. It's a learning process because you've had this emotion your whole life and you've been trying to shut it out and thinking that it was a defect. It takes time to really learn to love it and learn to listen to it. But I believe I'm on that path now, and I'm very grateful. And it really does help me just like let go. Again, this is way easier said than done, and it's an everyday commitment to do that. The universe has a way bigger and better plan than I ever could imagine in my human brain. So just to, let go. All right, guys, just to wrap it up here, I did not share everything as far as all the details of my OCD. There's a lot more, and I probably in the future I will be more open to sharing more of the details. And I just want to say I am not a doctor. I know that there's other people out there with OCD that was worse than mine, and that maybe couldn't have got to where I am now with just themselves. And honestly, if I could go back, I would go and get help and ask for help and tell people. But that wasn't my story. So, just know you're not alone, and there are people out there that can help. I'm only speaking from my experience, and that's all I can speak on. So, yeah, just wanted to say that. I also appreciate all of you guys for listening to podcast number 3, and I hope to inspire you to feel those emotions, even though they are scary. They're not there to hurt you. They're here to teach us. And I haven't figured all this shit out. Even today, I was dealing with some emotions that I got back into that thought loop of, why am I feeling this? I thought I'd let go of this. It's a constant daily commitment to feel the emotions, not attach to them, and let them go. And I believe we're always going to be learning and always going to be having to recommit to that every single day. It does get easier, and you do start to accumulate the knowledge and all that good stuff. So if any of this resonated with you, please subscribe. I will leave everything in the show notes of where else to find me. If you're watching on YouTube, hey. If you're on Spotify, go check out my YouTube channel. And if you're on YouTube and you want to listen to this as well, go over to Spotify. I am going to be releasing one episode every week. I believe they're going to be on Tuesdays, so look out for that. Thank you guys so much. Peace out, guys. Have a good day.